Snow drifted like whispers over the pines that winter, and the mountains stood solemn, watching. Out there, tucked deep in the Montana wilderness, a man named Eli Carson lived alone in a cabin built with his own rough hands. Folks in town called him the ghost of Bear Creek, not because he was dead, but because he might as well have been. He spoke to no one, came for supplies twice a month, and left before the church bell could ring noon. They said he'd buried his heart 10 years ago beside a woman named Sarah, and since then, he'd buried himself. But life has a cruel way of dragging the dead back into the light. That light came one stormy night when a knock echoed through his cabin door, a knock that carried desperation and cold, and the faint cry of a child. Eli froze. No one ever came this far up the ridge. He reached for his rifle before unlatching the door, the wood groaning against the wind. There she stood, a woman in a tattered shawl, soaked to the bone, clutching a baby wrapped in burlap. Behind her, 2 children, a boy maybe 10, a girl 8, huddled close, trembling. Her lips were blue, her eyes white and wild. "Please," she rasped. "They're freezing." Eli's voice came out rough, unused. "Who are you?" "Widow. Mara Finch," she stammered. "Our wagon broke near the pass, my husband's gone, wolves took the horse." A gust cut her words short. The children's eyes met Eli's, pleading, hollow, too quiet. He hesitated. For 10 winters, he'd lived without a soul near him. 10 winters of silence, and now, suddenly, the storm had brought him 4. He stepped aside. "Get in before you freeze solid." They stumbled in, leaving a trail of melting snow. The cabin filled with their small breaths, the baby's soft whimpering, the creak of old wood. Eli tossed more logs into the fire, the flames licking brighter. As the warmth grew, color crept back into the widow's face. She looked around the sparse cabin, 1 bed, 1 chair, 1 man's life pared down to nothing. "You live alone?" she asked softly. Eli grunted. "Been that way a long time." The boy, bold despite the cold, stepped forward. "I can chop wood if you let us stay. Mama says I'm strong." Eli glanced down at the small hands, calloused and red from the cold. He saw himself there, younger, scared, pretending not to be. "You'll sleep by the fire tonight," he muttered. "We'll talk in the morning." That night, Eli didn't sleep. The storm howled outside, snow piling against the door, but inside there was something new, breathing, life, warmth he hadn't felt in years. He watched the widow curl up near the hearth, her children pressed close. The baby's tiny fingers twitched in sleep. He told himself it was pity that kept him awake, not something deeper stirring beneath the frost around his heart. When dawn broke, the land was buried white. They were trapped for days, maybe weeks. The trail to town would be gone. By the 3rd day, Eli had built the boy, Sam, a smaller axe and taught him how to swing it. The girl, Elsie, helped cook what little food they had left, beans, dried venison, cornbread hard as stone. The widow, Mara, mended his torn shirts and hummed songs that sounded like sunlight through dust. "You don't talk much," she told him one night as they sat by the fire. "Don't have much to say. Maybe you've just forgotten how." He looked at her, really looked. Her hair was dark and tangled, but her eyes held a quiet strength, the kind that outlasted storms. She met his stare. "You saved us, Mr. Carson." He turned away, the fire flickering across his scarred knuckles. "Don't thank me yet. Winter's long. Dash dash dash." Weeks passed. Snow melted slow. The cabin that had been silent for a decade now echoed with laughter, small footsteps, and the rhythm of life. Eli found himself carving little wooden animals for Elsie, fixing a sled for Sam, building shelves with Mara for their food stores. He didn't know when the line between strangers and family began to blur, only that he dreaded the day they might leave. But spring came, and with it, danger. One afternoon, Eli went to the river to check his traps and found boot prints, fresh ones, too heavy for his own. They led toward the cabin. He moved fast, rifle in hand, every step quiet. When he reached the clearing, he saw them, 2 men on horseback, ragged, mean-looking. Mara stood in the doorway clutching her children. "Back away from them," Eli barked. The taller outlaw sneered. "Well, looky here. Thought the widow said her husband was dead. Guess she found herself a new one." Mara's voice shook. "They're the men from the pass. They robbed us, killed my husband." Eli's blood went cold. The outlaw spat into the snow. "We just came for what's ours, the wagon, the silver, maybe the woman too." Eli raised his rifle. You'll get lead and a grave. That's all." The second man moved fast, drawing his gun. A shot cracked through the cold air. The baby screamed. Mara fell to her knees. Eli fired, once, twice. The first outlaw dropped, the second fled into the trees, leaving blood and panic behind. Eli ran to Mara. The bullet had grazed her shoulder, blood staining her shawl. "Hold still," he said, voice breaking for the first time in years. "I'm fine," she gasped. "The children, they're safe," he said. "You're safe now." But inside, he knew the peace they'd found was gone. The wilderness had remembered them. And once death touches your doorstep, it doesn't forget. Days later, after he buried the outlaw near the frozen creek, Eli sat outside the cabin, the sunset bleeding gold through the pines. Mara joined him, her arm in a sling. "You risked your life for us," she said quietly. "Didn't have a choice." "Of course you did." He said nothing. The wind carried her words away, but she kept looking at him with those steady, searching eyes. "You've been alone too long, Eli." He let out a shaky breath. "It's easier that way." "Easier," she said, "but not living." He turned toward her then, the fire of dusk flickering in her eyes. "You thinking of leaving when the trail clears?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But the children, they call this home now." Something in him cracked open, a wound or maybe a door. "Then maybe," he said slowly, "you ought to stay." Spring brought color back to the land. The pines dripped green, the creek sang again, and laughter returned to the cabin. Eli built a second room, saying it was for the children, but when Mara brought him coffee in the mornings, smiling in the doorway, he knew he'd built it for her too. Sam called him, Pa, by accident one day, chopping wood outside. The boy froze, cheeks red. Eli just smiled, the first true smile in 10 years. "You'd better finish that stack, son." By summer, it no longer felt strange. The ghost of Bear Creek was gone. In his place stood a man with dirt on his hands, children on his knees, and a woman who looked at him like the sun had finally risen. One evening, as fireflies blinked in the darkening woods, Mara sat beside him on the porch, her head against his shoulder. "You saved us that night," she said softly. "But I think we saved you too." Eli didn't answer. He didn't need to. The mountains were quiet, and for once, the silence didn't hurt. Far off, thunder rumbled, not a storm, just summer's reminder that peace is fragile. But inside that little cabin, under a roof of pine and stars, a lonely woodsman had finally found something worth living for. And though no one in town knew it yet, the ghost of Bear Creek had become a legend of another kind, not a man haunted by loss, but one reborn by love. The wilderness took many souls in those days. But sometimes, it gave one back.